Rishi Sunak signals he is open to discussing this year's pay with nurses. Rishi Sunak has declined to rule out reopening this year's pay deal for nurses when ministers meet health workers' leaders for talks on Monday, signaling for the first time a willingness to address their demands for more money now. The Prime Minister, asked whether pay rises for 2022 to 23 could still be possible, repeatedly suggested the government was willing to have those conversations with union leaders, despite ministers previously refusing to reopen talks. The door has always been open to talk about the things that nurses want to talk about, and the unions want to talk about more generally, which is why we actually just wrote to all the unions from across the public sector in for talks, and those talks are happening on Monday, he told BBC One Sunday with Laura Kinsberg programme. The government has always been clear that it's happy to talk about pay for this year that's responsible, that's affordable, that's always been clear. It wouldn't be right for me to sit here and start having negotiations in public with you, or with anybody else. Sunak, who is grappling with the biggest wave of industrial action in decades, is hoping that the talks with ministers could curtail further strikes by public sector workers including nurses, postal staff and train drivers. But the unions have said that could only happen if they look again at this year's pay settlement. He declined to categorically rule out a pay rise for nurses this year, and, asked by Kinsberg whether talks could include pay right here, right now, meaning the 2022 to 23 settlement rather than that for 2023 to 4, he replied, "We want to have these conversations."
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.
Kinsberg whether talks could include pay right here, right now, meaning the 2022 to 23 settlement rather than that for 2023 to 4, he replied, "We want to have these conversations." However, the Prime Minister added, "We're about to start a new pay settlement round for this year 2023 to 4. Before that process starts, the government is keen to sit down with the unions and talk about pay and make sure they understand where we're coming from." Pat Cullen, the General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing, suggested the Prime Minister had raised expectations that reopening discussions on this year's pay deal was now on the table, which could help avert further strikes. Otherwise, the nurses' strike on 18 and January 19 would go ahead. She indicated last week that nurses could be willing to accept a 10% pay rise with a call on the government to meet them halfway. She said that the demand for a 19% rise, branded unaffordable by the government, was just a starting point. After the interview, she told the BBC there was now a chink of optimism and that there had been a little shift from Sunak. The Prime Minister talked about coming to the table. "That's a move for me because I've said let's meet halfway. I can't negotiate on my own and on the airwaves. If that table is now available, I will be there. But it must be about addressing pay from 2022-23, she said. "We will put our case, but what the government wants to talk about tomorrow is pay moving forward and in the broadest terms. That is not going to avert the strike action that's planned for 10 days' time. We will put our case, but what the government wants to talk about tomorrow is pay moving forward and in the broadest terms. That is not going to avert the strike action that's planned for 10 days' time. 10 days' time."
Subscribe our YouTube channel and click our bell icon for new videos.